in Israel, the country's war cabinet is due to meet this afternoon to determine a response to Iran's unprecedented attack on Israel over the weekend. Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles against Israel on Saturday night. Israel says its interception systems were able to stop those missiles from causing any casualties. But there's also been some suggestions that Iran, in fact, planned these attacks to make sure that there were no casualties. Iran had said it would retaliate for an attack on its continent in Syria, which killed 7 people. Israel's refused to confirm or deny that it was responsible for that attack. Professor Abel Esterhuyse is an Associate Professor of Strategy at the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor, good day to you. I mean, firstly, at face value, it looks like this is a huge escalation in this conflict in the Middle East, the first time Iran has attacked Israel directly. Do you see it as a major escalation, or do you see it in some other way?
Not at all, Stephen. This is not an escalation. This is more, in my opinion, diplomacy at a high level. Let's call it armed diplomacy that is unfolding. The attack from Iran was probably the most telegraphed assault in the history of war. Everybody knew it's going to come. They made sure through diplomatic channels in Switzerland and Turkey that the U.S. understands that, Iran don't want the war to escalate, but they don't want to lose face. They had to react and respond to what the Israelis did in Syria, and of course the killing of the commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Syria. So this was, in my opinion, more a symbolic attack than anything else.
So if you see it as a symbolic attack, Israel, of course, claiming that the only reason there are no casualties were because of its Iron Dome interception system, also because, as I understand it, American, British, and I think some French forces also intercepted some of these missiles and drones. How does Israel respond? I mean, does Israel have to respond?
Well, I hope Israel is not going to respond. Israel don't have to respond, and I hope that Netanyahu will sort of keep his head and not respond to this attack. The mere fact that almost every single Arab and Western country participated to make sure that not a single one of these rockets and weapon systems ended up in Israel is an indication that everybody was sort of expecting this, and everybody helped to allow the Iranians to launch their symbolic attack, but to also make sure that there's no, harm caused on the Israeli side. So, yeah, I hope Israel don't respond to this, because there's no need for Israel to respond to this.
Iran has said that if Israel responds, or I think as they put it, makes another severe mistake, its reaction would be severe. I mean, clearly Iran, again through channels and it seems on X in different ways, is telling Israel not to respond. I mean, there's a very strange kind of language that's being used here. People are communicating with each other.
Yeah, I have no doubt that we're seeing diplomacy unfolding here, and it's armed diplomacy, and I think the message from Iran to Israel is clear. Please don't respond. We don't want to escalate this, so don't respond. So I hope that Israel sort of get the message that Israel don't over-respond. In fact, Israel don't have to respond at all. That's what we all want. Israel have to downplay this, not to up the game here.
How important is the United States in all of this? Obviously, it's playing a very important role in terms of being Israel's most important ally.
Well, the United States over time have developed an adversarial relationship with Iran as well. So there's a higher order diplomatic reality within which this attack is being done and was done. On the one hand, there's the standoff between Iran and America, and then at a lower level, the Iranians are involved in regional support to regional actors in the conduct of terror and armed conflict. So there's a number of layers that we are seeing here, and I don't think Israel needs to play into any one of these realities. I think Israel needs to keep this under the conflict radar. Let's get Israel to focus on Hamas and getting in Gaza and getting Israel getting Israel out of Gaza.
You may want to cough or something if you like for a moment, Professor, but one of the things that's interesting about all of this is that strategically, and you're a professor of military strategy, you may be entirely correct that actually there's no need for Israel to respond. Politically, that may be slightly different. Iran also could maybe not have responded to Israel and Israel's attack, presumably a presumed Israeli attack on that Iranian consulate in Syria. But I'm sure there was domestic pressure in Iran. The people of Iran wanted a response, and I would imagine that voters in Israel might also want a response to this. Does that make it a lot more complicated for the people who actually make the decisions?
I think it's a consideration. It's a factor they will consider, but I don't think it is in the case of Israel a critical factor. I think the strategic focus in Israel at present is on Gaza. This is where the Israeli military is deployed. This is where the primary threat for Israel is coming from. I don't see the Israeli focus on Iran at the moment. I think the big beneficiary here, perhaps, Stephen, is the Russians, because it has taken the U.S. focus away from the Ukraine conflict in its totality, and Israel, or rather the Americans, are now focused on what is unfolding in the Middle East and not what is going on in Ukraine anymore. The Europeans, of course, are quite concerned about both the war in Ukraine and the fact that the Americans are not that much concerned about Ukraine anymore. So I think, the bigger strategic picture for me here is no, Israel is not focused on the Iranian threat. That's the American concern. For Israel, their focus at the moment is on Gaza and dealing with Hamas. And we need to bring that conflict to an end, and we need to find a solution to that conflict.
I mean, in a way, all of these conflicts, of course, in the Middle East are sort of linked. Is there any prospect of Israel actually leaving Gaza again? It seems almost to refuse to want to do that, and yet there are peace talks underway in Cairo. They've sort of been underway for quite some time.
Well, the big problem at the moment, of course, is the number of Israelis that is still, in their opinion, being held captured by Hamas. But I think there's also a disconnect between the names on the Israeli list and the names on the Hamas list. And that has to do with a number of realities. Some of those people probably has been killed in the process. Some of them have simply, not deliberately, but has become victim in the conflict between the two sides on the 7th of October. And so I think they need to reach an agreement on the number of people and the names on the list of the hostages, and try and find a solution to that problem, because I think there's quite a difference there between the list of the hostages Israel has and the list the list by Hamas. And I think that's the key to resolving the conflict in Gaza.
Professor Abel Esterhuyse, thank you. Associate Professor of Strategy at the Faculty of Military Science at the University of Stellenbosch.